Everything high. The election was really influential. I got pictures. Which here is the ground. We are not living the society of 70 years ago. I'm living soon.
James Okoye Osemene. I'm a senior lecturer in Department of Peace Studies and Conflict Resolution, University of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, Imo State. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's LSA conference. And we have about 5 presentations. We'll be starting with a presentation by Wilmot Allen, who is online. Please, let's confirm if he's online. Wilmot Allen. Okay.
Just lastly,
Okay, who is my co-chair? Yeah, so he's presently in the law. He couldn't make the discussion. Unforeseen circumstances. So we'll be starting with Kelechi Igwe. Well, Kelechi Igwe is a research assistant at the Nigerian Institute for International Affairs, Lagos here, via. He's a postgraduate student in the Department of History and Strategic Studies, University of Lagos, and African biodiversity, food insecurity, and human security. So that is the presentation. Please, you can join us. You can join us.
Okay.
I'm in here. Yes. Yeah. Yes. You can. You can see. Yes. Or you stay here. Yes, you can stand. Fine, stand. What?
Peter Oluwason.
Yeah.
Oluwason.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll send my slide if you. Okay, yeah, for the picture.
We will send this. Should send this.
We'll send it. Take it.
Okay. Okay, you can start.
I think you can share that.
You share this slide, bro.
Yeah. Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Igwe Kelechi.
Just 10 minutes.
10 minutes for okay. I'm very quick with it. So the title of my research is African Biodiversity Loss, Food Security and Rising Risks to Human Security in Africa. So thanks for joining. My purpose for this topic is to interrogate non-kinetic causes of conflict in Africa, which often leads to human insecurity. And in Africa, much research and much in-depth investigation have not done on the climate of biodiversity loss in Africa. We've not really, connected the fact that lots of food insecurity often leads to human insecurity, often leads to rises of reasons for conflict in Africa. When there's, reduction of food, in the public space, there's always the need for scarcity, which makes humans to, not cross against each other. So that's the, bedrock for the blueprint of this research. So I will quickly go with my research overview. First, we look at the background of the study, then statement of research of the significance of this study. Why is this study very important in Africa? Aims and objectives, biodiversity loss and rising risks to human security. The strategies on the mitigation of biodiversity loss in Africa, then conclusion. So can go to the next slide for next slide. Okay, sure. So the background here, I tried to define what we mean by diversity. So an understudy part aspect of human of climate change is the human and security related effects of biodiversity. The term biodiversity from biological diversity refers to the variety of life on Earth at all levels. Biodiversity is the variation among living organisms from different sources, including terrestrial, marine, and desert ecosystem and the ecological complex space which they are part of. So, I'll go to the next slide. Then the next slide, I tried to give a statistical data to show why or the depleting nature of biodiversity loss in Africa. Like I said, when I get to my infant study, so I will properly emphasize on why we have this loss of biodiversity in Africa, because policymakers, national governments across the continent of Africa have not really, put much effort in trying to harness the rich biodiversity we have in Africa, which often leads to the loss of it. So we all know the whole climate debate, that the industrialization, the global north of mechanized industrialization, we in Africa, the global south are the receiving end. But then we in Africa have not really domesticated these environmental global resolutions on how to mitigate climate change. The whole COP21, COP15 Paris Agreement, Montreal in Canada agreement that was held last year in December 2022, where global leaders came together to come up with an environmental resolution globally for how to mitigate climate change. But then in the African continent, they still need to domesticate these resolutions to drive it down to the grassroots. So I'll very much appreciate the areas you need to go in. This kind of research requires field work. It requires proper funding to go in, look for data, to go into the rural farmers. Everybody will agree that majority of farmers in Africa are not, heavily commercialized. We still have a lot of, small scale farmers in Africa, and largely our economy, our livelihood largely depends on their outputs, agricultural outputs, be livestock, be it animal husbandry, and farming. So these are the challenges we have in Africa. So this research is looking at ways on how to domesticate, first of all, how to domesticate, these global environmental resolutions to Africa, to help Africa mitigate issues of biodiversity loss and all of that. So let's go to, you can follow with the slide to see the statement of research problem. Let's go to statement of research. Yeah, I tried to show that we have very scarce literature on Africa's rich biodiversity. Let me also reiterate that depleting of food insecurity often leads to conflict. That needs to be heavily established. I remember in 2019 or 2020, the United Nations World Food Program won the Nobel Prize for Peace. You know, while a food organization winning a global, renowned, notable award on peace. That's because we're able to connect the issue of diminishing of food insecurity to solving conflicts in Africa. Everybody will know what the World Food Program, the interventions that they were able to carry out in Africa. The interventions in Africa were able to, with the calculations, was able to give them that award. That was because in Africa, when we have scarcity in food, which is naturally caused by conflicts in Africa, farmers are afraid to go to farm. The farm products, go on and waste. Lack of management, that's human-induced biodiversity loss. That contributes heavily to this problem that we are discussing. So with that, they were able to come up with food programs to help, poor African countries, not just to solve the issue of food insecurity, but also to solve the issue of human insecurity, rising threats to human insecurity. So until African national governments come together to also look at the non-kinetic approaches to security, to peace and conflict, then we'll be able to, consider the loss of biodiversity to make sure that we have an abundance of food, making sure we have food security to avoid conflict in Africa. Lack of naturally makes humans to go out and do the undue. So let's come to next slide. Okay, this is a representation from the United Nations Environmental and World Food Program to show that we have little research work done on Africa. Down here you have regions in Africa and the literatures they have in terms of research, in terms of government policies as well to tackle biodiversity, which is very, very low. Let's go to another slide. Come to aims and objectives. Sure. So first of all, the aim and objective of this study to establish the factors contributing to the causes of human insecurity in Africa. First of all, causes of human insecurity in Africa is due to poor management of ethnic diversities and conflict over resources and all of that. But then also the leading pressure from human and climate is equally causing human insecurity. So the second objective of this study is to encourage the inclusion of climate actions in mitigating the loss of biodiversity in government's non-kinetic approach to human security. This number 2 aim is the foundation of this research. Then to provide grassroots knowledge for domestication of multilateral environmental agreements into the African peculiarities to tackling loss of biodiversity and rising human insecurity. Let's go to next slide. Okay, so I try to explain or connect biodiversity and the rising risks to human insecurity here. So I listed the human pressures that do cause loss of biological diversity. So we have pollution, which are naturally caused by humans by careless environmental non-policies and all. Then invasion and poaching as well. A lot of plants and animals that are naturally in Africa by inhabitants are migrating out because of the harsh environmental features that we are witnessing in Africa. Then we equally have natural disasters. Natural disasters sometimes are not really human induced. So these are issues that the African continent are facing, and if we are insensitive with our continental policies at the African Union level, sub-regionally at the ECOWAS level, if we neglect biodiversity, this problem will keep multiplying, and when it keeps multiplying, we're losing our planet Earth. Once human, and our populations are equally doubling. The United Nations have predicted that by 2050 that the African population, which currently exceeds 1 billion human beings, are going to be. We double our population and we are unable to manage our environment, and we are losing out in our biodiversity. So I wonder what will be left. You can imagine the loss of food insecurity that will be leading to human problems, human security problems. So that's why it is another representation. We are unable to manage our biodiversity. Let's go to another slide. Yeah, let's leave it here. So, of course, the climate conditions in Africa are not all the same in all regions. We have the tropicals, we have the coastal region, we probably have the savannas, the desert regions. So, of course, the desertification in Africa is equally a big problem, and the AU at the sub-regional level, SIDAC, ECOWAS, in the Sahel, in countries located at the Gulf of Guinea, are really not able to come up with a decisive multilateral solutions that can drive home solutions for a mitigated biodiversity loss. So if you look at this map, you'll be able to see that for now, not really it's not really encroaching further south, but it's really happening. The Great Green Wars in Africa have been a problem at the continental level, even at the United Nations forums, where African leaders go into, to demand for funds for climate change and all. When these funds, come in, do we really utilize these funds, leverage on these funds to mitigate our climate issues? The answer, this is a rhetorical question. So 1 minute. 1 minute. Okay, let's go to the strategies. Let me skip the go. Yeah. These are one of the major with notable environmental resolutions passed across the world. COP15 that happened in Montreal in Canada, where the world came together to agree to help the global south in terms of funds to I'll conclude with my strategies on how go up with this. So first of all, we have to, there's need for robust education and enlightenment to the rural farmers in Africa to understand the problem at hand. Majority of them, like I said, we have those skilled farmers in Africa, and somehow our GDPs, our livelihood, having food on our tables still relies on them. Mechanized farming is in Africa, yes, robust, very good, but we still have a large number of low-scale farmers. Lasting solutions needs to be tapped. Then domestication of the multilateral environmental agreement, like I said before, needs to be driven home in Africa. Next slide. Let me see. So the conclusion. You can't really, detach food insecurity from one of the factors that leads to human insecurity. Until we tackle the issue of biodiversity, then we can be able to manage food insecurity, which will lead to, an improved human security. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Kelechi, from University of Lagos, Department of History and Strategic Studies. Thank you for those who just joined us now. I'm Dr. James Okolosemi. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, senior student. My co-chair is online, Latindo Olani. He's presently in Ilorin, and he'll be making the next presentation, which is co-author. Please help us document your questions and your comments. What I observe from your paper is timely. There's no better time than now to talk about biodiversity loss, food security, and food insecurity, because there's a nexus between human survival and safety, as well as peace and conflict. In fact, they are interrelated. And many countries as we speak are suffering, like he said. And one thing I want to take away from his paper is that there's need for the documentation of international multilateral laws, environmental laws, and they have done some works on the ecological issues in the Niger Delta and Estuary. I was also part of a team that did research, conducted research when we attended the was hosted by the federal government of Nigeria when Buhari was, former President Buhari was there. And one thing they talked about has to do with this issue of shrinking of the Lake Chad Basin. The Lake Chad Basin has lost its size. In fact, below 25% of the original size. And why am I talking about? You know, the lack of water is an issue. Drought is there, like you mentioned. And when all these things are happening, you see the crisis in the Sahel, Horn of Africa, the Great Lakes. There's currently a problem, big problem in Africa. And he has already given us his suggestions. So we will discuss more on that. Thank you, Kelechi, for your Kelechi for your presentation. And the next presentation will be done by Adebukola Peter Oguntola and the presentation is on transnational security regimes in post-colonial Sahel. So let's listen to them. Thank you. Please unmute yourself, Olatunde. Please unmute yourself, Olatunde. Yes, thank you.
Yes, good morning, Doctor. Good morning to everyone there. I just sent you a message. Maybe you check the chat.
Then he has sent a message.
Don't worry, just continue your presentation. We will check the email, please. Go ahead with your presentation.
Presentation is scheduled for 8 p.m.
No, there's a mix-up. No, you are scheduled for this morning.
Yes,
He said he's on his way to Abuja.
Okay, okay. Okay, so let's take the next presenter. Thank you. Thank you. Let's take the next presentation. The next presentation by Oludare Olawale Mosumola and Olaolu Peter Oluwasanmi of Durban University of Technology. You're welcome.
Yeah. All right, good morning. Yes, yeah, slide. My slide. My slide. Yes, in the email. Yes. What's that? Local solution to local.
Yes, that one.
So, good morning. I'm Oluwasanmi, and I will be presenting on global solutions to local problems. I will tell you national security architecture. So if you follow the trend of events in Nigeria, especially in the past administration, you bear witness with that Nigeria has been going through unabated upsurge of violence and insecurity in different parts of the country. And that has been occasioned by the activities of the insurgents and groups, separatist movements. At least we are all aware of the Boko Haram activities in the north. We are aware of what is going on in the east, the IPOB and the likes of the separatist advocates. We have other former crises in the Benue area, and likewise we have in the southwest part of Nigeria. Nigeria, and we have the issue of kidnapping also very prevalent in almost part of Nigeria. And that's no doubt is one major problem confronting the Nigerian Federation. More worrisome is the spread of these violent activities and the attendant security that come with it. So the major challenge is the seemingly helplessness of the federal policing agency to curb the violent activities. And ensure the semblance of the security and the attempts by some of the non-state actors resorting to self-help in some parts of the Southwest. We could see that even the security architecture itself is overwhelmed, seriously overwhelmed, as if we do not even have the conventional security outfits as we used to have it. And that actually became worrisome to the extent that necessitated the adoption of new approach to the problem of security, especially by the governors of the southwestern states. In the states, as we have it today. So they believe firmly that the security issue are context solutions are better profiled to local problems. So the governors in June 2019 came together in Ibadan to fine-tune the approach to solve the problem of insecurity, especially in the southwest Nigeria. And on January 2020, they came up with a formidable approach, which is that Western Nigerian Security Network, codenamed Amotekun. So the establishment of the Amotekun in the southwest Nigeria was a response to the escalating insecurity challenge faced by the region. So the objective of this study, the first one is to interrogate the rationale behind the establishment of Amotekun as a subnational security arrangement within the federal system. At the same time, examine the strategies and modus operandi of the Amotekun Corps. Also, we are going to probe into how the operation of Amotekun depart from that of the conventional security outfits we have in Nigeria. And finally, we are going to find out the challenges faced by the Amotekun Corps. Our theoretical framework is a theory of federalism, which is the defining characteristics of federalism include the presence of a central authority that represents the whole and act on behalf of the whole in external affairs, and such internal affairs as are held to be of common interest, and the existence of provincial or state authority with power manifestation and administration within the sphere allotted to them by the Constitution. So the implication is that there is a division of functions, duties, and obligations of government between the national government, the government of the constituency. So this division is typically done by the Constitution, which is rigid and written in nature. So the federal government and the component unit in the country, at least we see, in fact, some people have described Nigerian federalism as a military federalism, and that shows a kind of central overburdening. But there are some functions that have been taken over by the federal government, which should actually be in the concurrent list. So this actually becomes a problem. So the federal government often with excessive control of and influence, leading to a centralized system that undermines the autonomy and decision-making ability of the states. So this imbalance perpetuates a sense of dependency on the federal government and limits the state's ability to address their specific needs and concern. And in this case, security concern. So the main cause of this is that security issue is enshrined in the exclusive legislative power of the federal government in the 1999 Constitution, especially when you check the Schedule 2, Part 1. So, given the pervasive security gap, the component unit, that is the state, were coming up with their local initiative to quell the scourge of insecurity within their local space. Example, we have in Nigeria, we have Ishba Police in Kano, we have Amotekun Corps in southwest state, we have Ibubiagu in South, we have Shedek Fasha in the Kaduna State, and some others that are springing up. So this is prevention of national security outfits in Nigeria. So the operation of Amotekun and the modus operandi, they have three major focus. The first one is community policing. And this has been the clamor of everyone that the issue of security should be localized in Nigeria. And that has not been until the arrival of all these subnational security outfits. So, like I said, the first one is community police. Amotekun takes the community policing approach by engaging with local communities to gather intelligence and provide security assistance. And this has been very helpful. When last year is a big issue, but through the network with the local community, they were able to arrest the perpetrator of that act. And another strategy is they are locally focused. Unlike national security forces, Amotekun focus is primarily national, regional, and local. And this allows them to better understand the particular challenge and nuance of their region's security situation. And the last one is integration with traditional security outfits. And what we just think that it should just work independently, but there's the kind of leveraging between the two outfits. So they strive to integrate with support the existing security outfits in an area. And this ensures that there is a mutually beneficial relationship and the communities feel safe. So talking about the challenges of Amotekun, and despite this effort, Amotekun still face several challenges as are noted here. The first one is lack of funding. And this arises from the fact that Amotekun has not actually been captured at national level. It's only operates at the regional level, and because of that, there's likely that they are not captured the revenue allocation of at the national level, and that becomes a problem. So each region is left to take care of its own security outfit, and even at the regional level, some of these states don't even give a damn. For instance, Lagos State don't have such. No, they said they have a similar outfit, but they don't have Amotekun as a security outfit in the states. Though it is also located within the southwestern state. Then the second one is legal status debate. And one of the major challenges faced by the Amotekun corps is this issue of is it constitutional, not constitutional, we know how battle was fought and won. The another one is equipment and training. They don't have the sophisticated equipment enough to allow them to operate. And bear in mind that the people they are facing, they are combating with, these people are basically sophisticated people much more than the cops that want to arrest them. That actually become a problem. And then the issue of training also is a major challenge because it's not been well trained. Then we have the issue of coordination among the states. Like I said, even Lagos State, though was part of the arrangement, was part of the discussion for the coming up with the Amotekun initiative, but has not even done anything regarding that. So what are the way forward? The first one is enhanced cooperation among the southwestern states. All of them need to come together, at least to make sure that the fine-tune the process to make them operate effectively. And the second one is fully covered. Constitutional has to be involved to make sure that the security issue is not only in the exclusive list, but should be developed to other legislative power, and for instance, either concurrent list or residual list. Then they allow the Amotekun corps to carry the sophisticated firearms such as AK-47 at least. They invest in innovative such as the use of drone, surveillance equipment, and so on and so forth. So I'm sure that for context-specific solution to the security challenge in Nigeria, and by providing localized approach to security, Amotekun will be successful in combating violent activities in southwest Nigeria. And a new challenge continues to arise. It is crucial for Amotekun to continue to collaborate with the existing security apparatus and other localized security outfits to ensure the safety of the people of Southwest Asia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Well, such an interesting presentation. You know, this panel is on post-colonial security regimes, and lots have been discussed, and we still expect more because when I look at the presentation, it's timely. The Southwest region is strategic in Nigeria's landscape, political landscape, and in fact, you can't talk about Nigeria without talking about the Southwest. Because even the British former British colonial administrators started. I remember you said 2020 Amotek.
Yeah.
Good. One thing I remember about this Amotek, a lot of studies have been conducted in the past 3 years. And one thing I remember is that it was highly controversial.
Yes.
The controversy generated. Why? Because security is just within the exclusive list.
Yeah.
The federal government doesn't permit, based on the Constitution, 1999 Constitution, that any other tier of government, like local government or state, will talk about security provision, and that is the major issue. But you know that insecurity does not respect anybody, no matter your race.
Yeah.
When everybody, every race, most people were affected from different parts of the world. And the problem is that the federal government is or does not trust some of these units. There's this fear of abuse of powers when they give them the right, the constitutional guarantee, right to allow them to provide security within the state. Another concern is use to hijack security because you cannot talk about confronting violent non-state armed groups without leaders coming together to agree. And you can see how various parts of the country have been struggling. Even with the Amotekun, like you said, Lagos state government is not actively involved. And you know that there will always be problem of funding. I remember receiving reports from Dawn Commission on this issue of Amotekun. So one thing I like about your presentation is your recommendation, because groupism is something that we cannot shy away from. Non-state armed groups, they are actively involved in that. Why can't the authority, the states, state actors come together and agree? At least overlook some of their political differences, because like I said earlier, insecurity does not respect anybody, no matter your level. Whether you are a lecturer, governor, president. In fact, a lot of leaders have been spending much on security provision.
Yes.
And I can tell you authoritatively that we need not spend much on security in Nigeria if things are normal. Talking about security votes and all that, look at the billions of naira budgeted yearly on that. So thank you for your presentation. We'll discuss more on that. Please keep your comments and questions as soon as we finish the presentation. We're taking the next presenter. The next presentation is by Damwe Zhu. The title of her presentation is Regional Insecurity Dilemma in West Africa, Revisiting the Casamance Conflict. And I want to briefly talk about value that mentioned it. Damwe Zhu is a PhD candidate at the University of Washington, whose research focuses on conflict management in West Africa. She received her PhD in international policy from Northeast Normal University and attended University of University. She has some interest in African studies. She has contributed to the publication of an article on the topic of national identity transition, China's aid policy to Africa, and the formation of China-Africa Community of Common Destiny in 2019. We welcome Damwe Zhu.
Okay, so So, today I present a paper about freedom of speech and critical Western. Thank you. So first, so here I want to read the title. As we all know that ECOWAS is the first regional organization in Africa to intervene in member states' domestic conflicts, right? So it is a very great breakthrough in African continent. And Hamas conflict in Senegal is the oldest unresolved civil conflict in West Africa. However, without any big international or regional organization to get involved in this conflict. So my central research question is that why did ECOWAS not take part in this conflict? Even though it is the longest civil conflict, still has very negative effect on not only domestic or even regional aspects. Okay, so so in this research, I applied case studies and archival research of international organizations archives from ECOWAS, African Union. So, and for the theoretical framework, first of it is new works. So Mary Caldwell developed new works that in 1999. About a warfare that will go about identity politics, community in the conventional warfare or ideological or geopolitical context. And at the means of the new war, it is more about like rebels, insurgents. They want to provoke fear and hatred among people. Contributed to, for example, with liberation struggles in Africa since during the 60s, 50s, they want to find people to take control of government power from colonial power. And as for financing, it is more like a decentralized war economy versus the centralized war economy in traditional warfare. However, I also have some critics about this framework. So first, I argue that it overlooks some regional characters when they apply to African context. So I will go through this one later. And secondly, it overlaps with some existing frameworks such as the Smart Left and William Reynolds World War conflict. But not every conflict in Africa falls into World War conflict. So that's why new war methods has many merits like to capture the victory in African conflict. Okay, so second, theoretical framework is victory dilemma. Victory dilemma is a very important term in international relations. Describe one state action completely of the other state of next door. There is a group, there are other states victory dilemma. We summarize some experiences from the Third World during the after the Cold War, and they argue that state shift is focused from external threats like invasion from foreign states to internal threats such as secessionists, terrorists, and militia, which are rooted in state weakness. So as some scholars argue that the effort of one group to secure its own victory later scattered domestic groups left secure. For example, like the majority of the group might threaten by the survival of the marginal ethnic groups. So I choose Catamount conflict as my case study. As you can see from this map, Catamount is separated from Senegal by the Gambia. So it is sandwiched between Gambia and Guinea-Bissau. At first, the peaceful demonstration is actually by a group of people. They are the call for independence from Senegal. However, because of the brutal repression by the government army, it transformed to an armed struggle in 1990s. So the separate organization is AFFC. And we can understand it through the new work that says first, the goal of the So, identity is very different from the Northern part of Senegal, which is one of South Asia, very different identity, cultural, historical connection, and things. So, and for the rebel population, it's not only government but also civilians. They bury landmines in villages that cause thousands of deaths or injuries. And as for the vaccine, so both the government and the rebel organization, they took part in cross-border timber trafficking and other arms, illegal activity, trafficking arms activities. And also the government conflict has a very strong regional character. It has spillover effect that is very prominent. It indirectly triggered a civil war in Middle East. And multiple West African states heavily get involved in the conflict, Gambia and so, and therefore it cannot be reduced to a pure domestic affair of Senegal. And thirdly, as I mentioned earlier, so the cross-border movements were not limited to the flow of refugees, but also some illicit activities. However, there was no regional English efforts that was devoted to conflict resolution. And plus, community only mentioned once in 2000 to prevent Senegalese behavior is effort to initiate dialogue with the separatist organization. So why did people smash the party over there? So I propose four factors to explain the absence of that. First, the Senegalese government treated the secessionist movement as an internal affair and thus it is unwilling to get other Senegal's advantageous position within ECOWAS. So Senegalese president served as the chairman of ECOWAS from 1992 to 1993 and from 2001 to 2003. And secondly, the sovereignty and self-determination was still a very sensitive topic among post-colonial Africa today, which restricted the role of activists. For example, African states independently very cherish their current borders with neighboring states because for political leaders, it is easier for them to survive by controlling the borders and and always more livelihood of separatists by asking member states to respect each other's borders. For member states support for separatist movement, which limits the space for efforts to maneuver. Security was still the time of so ECOWAS intervened in 3 civil wars during the 1990s. The Liberia Civil War, Australia Civil War, and the Guinea Civil War. And the timing of ECOWAS intervention was very interesting. It is when the 3 state governments are in great danger, like the state is collapsed, that ECOWAS intervened in it. However, in Panama's case, it never threatened the survival of the state of Senegal or the region of Senegal. And there is little international support to the separatist organization, so they rely on a local community while they compared to other rebel parties in Africa. And the Senegalese army took a very strong action against MFC. And lastly, and very closely related to the Korean War, ECOWAS was swamped with civil wars throughout the time, and thus was unable to provide help to the community. So I conclude that internal security dilemma is simply featured in many post-colonial regions, and regional international organizations still loyal guardian of region security. There is a long way to go from human security to take root in regional security architecture. And also since that there is a new regional security dynamics in Latin America, for example, Boko Haram in Nigeria, so that could play a more active role in the new challenge. And also, I provide some potential counter arguments to my point. First, Edward was not an imperial or impartial actor. How to guarantee that we will not be admittedly, it is possible that mechanisms can be manipulated by powerful actors. But regional organizations care about its reputation and its culture. And also the inclusion of more states that help to mitigate the influence of the stronger. And secondly, economic capacity. So what if intervention itself bring more trouble than help to the conflict resolution? So my point is that everyone could exploit its advantage as the problem is not regional. And extract international systems, take advantage of mitigation and prevention and not every solution goes to major approach. And lastly, considering that the boundaries between regional security threat and internal affairs of the world, how to avoid the regional organization or substate interventionist behavior and how to develop state sovereignty. So I argue that intervention is not identical to peace enforcement operations. Aside from mediation and good operation, there are various ways for actors to take part in refugee settlements and small arms and light weapons. Thank you.
Thank you. The paper looked at the Casamance conflict. I remember reading about that about 2 years ago. In my former university, I studied some works on that. And Senegal is a peaceful state, if not for this Casamance issue. And there's no doubt that, there's no disputation that the insecurity in West no longer interstate conflicts. What we now have since the end of the Cold War is intrastate conflict, that is internal security threat. And this is occasioned by the activities of violent non-state groups, secessionists. And Nigeria is not free. We have our own share of the problem in the northeast, in the northwest. Bandits are there. In the southeast near us here, we have IPOB and MASOC. So it is, in fact, I wrote here that do not have internal security threats. They are very few. I don't know if they are up to 20. I doubt. I don't think they are up to 20 because the last time I traveled to France, 2017, I remember while arriving through Istanbul in Turkey, in Nice, I saw heavily armed soldiers. If you see the guns they were carrying, I never saw that kind of gun. In this Africa, I've not seen that type of gun they were carrying. I mean, in French territory, they were heavily armed patrolling the airports. So why am I saying this? Why I'm saying this is that there are few countries that are safe, very few. I don't know, maybe they are in Europe or Asia, but there are few. And the point that we has made is that there is need for not just good offices coming together to talk about insecurity and the solution. We have to look beyond and look at sustainability of the solution. And she has also said that the situation in Senegal has lasted for decades. In fact, more than 40 years now, or about 40. So it's a major challenge because when countries pretend that they don't care or it's regard it as internal security or issue, it's a problem because I remember when Nigeria's insurgency was treated as a Nigerian problem. Remember the consequence. It's no longer a Nigerian issue. It's now a Lake Chad area, Sahel issue. They now have the networks of terrorist groups operating within that region. And even with the establishment of multinational joint task force, the problem has not been abated, it's still there. There are still issues. There are places you cannot travel to within the Sahel. Talking about places in Sierra, not Sierra Leone, Burkina Faso, Mali, even Niger, even Nigeria, some places. So where this topic is interesting is that security should not be treated as an internal problem alone. Yes, there are concerns about sovereignty. Leave us, let's address our problem. Like many people talk about IPOB issue. When some want to mediate, when we talk about third-party intervention, they say, leave us, let's handle our problem. Also, there are people that criticize those that want external intervention, that there will be abuse and mismanagement of the intervention. So let's receive some comments from the audience here before we go online to check if there are comments. But after that, we receive questions and comments. Then before I will now make my comments on the observations from the presentations. Thank you. Please, our intention is we want you to make the papers better, because that is the beauty of international conferences. No paper is perfect. Our interest is, please make your comments. Let the papers, get better, so that when they send it out for review, it will be acceptable. Thank you. Okay, one. Sorry, two. Okay, any other person? Three. Okay. Any other person? We need more comments. We need people to comment on we need people to comment. Okay, number.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Olubumi Omotola. I want to thank the presenters for this wonderful presentations. I want to talk to the first person, that's Kelechi, but he was sitting here. Okay. So initially, when you introduced him at history, so I was thinking, yes, I'll feel so much at home. But by the time we started the presentation, I didn't now know whether I was in science class, I was in geography class, and that for me is really something interesting. That's about, we're talking about multidisciplinary approach in scholarship. Because I was just like, it's history. I felt like I'm at home, history. But by the time it started, I actually got lost. So for me, like I said, that's a very, very, very good one. And it's pointing to the fact that history is not what it used to be, that history must be repositioned because history now, we just tell like what is in the past, but talking about very, very trending issues, talking about the environment, talking about climate change is something that is very, very good. Thank you so much. Well, please, like I said, I got lost. What is cold chain?
Cold chain refers to the acceleration of the transition of making sure that we don't lose because of lack of
Okay.
Because without that, just imagine perishable agricultural products like this.
Yeah.
Large farm products in harvest, but then there's no mechanized way of storage.
Okay.
Production to started, facilities are not there at all. So that is what it contributes to loss of diversity. Loss of diversity do not just mean agricultural products. It's equally refers to those production mechanisms equally contribute.
Okay, thank you. Please, so my second question to Mr. Olaniji, Abi, no, local problem to local solutions. When you're talking about the Amotekun, something just occurred to me that I don't know, maybe it's probably they can look at it. The police, like they go to police college, they are being trained. That if you have a kind of training, like people, they have a training. It's not like just anyone. I don't know how they recruit people. I'm not too sure about that. But I feel that if they sort of make it like a kind of school that people go there and be trained, then you can be sure that they can be no abuse, because we know that even with training, we still have police excesses. So I can imagine giving all those machines, all those guns, and all those ammunition to people that are not really trained. So I'm just thinking of that little area. I don't know, maybe it's something you have thought about, or you think it's something that can be incorporated. Then my last question, or maybe contribution, goes to the way. I hope I got it. See, when I was looking at ECOWAS, and I begin to look at the places that ECOWAS did not intervene. That was what I was asking you. So I picked Senegal. No, okay, Liberia. ECOWAS did not intervene in Senegal, but it intervened in Liberia, Guinea-Bissau, and which other place now? Sierra Leone. One, Liberia, I know the place, Senegal is French. So it could be the influence of France, because France has this kind of control over its our territories, or our first colonies. So those, because those places that ECOWAS did not intervene were controlled, had colonial relationship with France. For example, Guinea-Bissau was colonized by, I think, Portugal. Then Liberia, of course, liberated slaves. Then which other one? Sierra Leone by the British. So it was easier for, and when you're talking about ECOWAS, ECOWAS is Nigeria. ECOWAS is the person that will the country that will provide the major part is Nigeria, and Nigeria is British. So I'm sure, I'm not saying that, but I just had a feeling it could be the influence of France, because France, they don't just they have this kind of control over their experience. Thank you.
Yes, you have. Yeah, hold on, please. There's something she said, and I remember. You do know that most of the family of not the same, they don't have the same.
Yeah.
In fact, there's this mutual suspicion.
Okay.
When we talk about ECOWAS, and from my observation, it was only recently that France started withdrawing.
Yeah. Yes.
What you said, because the presence of France was there is an issue of footprint. When we talk about security provision, the footprint of the French forces, happen to be highly effective in those former colonies, and that could be one of the reasons.
Why ECOWAS?
Yeah, because security recognize this one back when there's back, there'll always be something or an anchor that will be the back. So then it is all right. Hold on. I'm saying one of the recommendations
Okay.
The first approach was to solving the situation. Security. So I actually want to report that they have a approach, because it was not something that
was
they
planned.
don't have time to plan. They just have to put them so that at least you're able to rescue the situation, the situation in the region. And I think another factor that we have affected the different process in Nigeria is this issue of politicization of the process, because people will have the stakeholders will have interest.
Okay.
For instance, either somebody is competent or not. If the person is coming from the governor himself, you just have to take the person. And that is the place in Nigeria, nepotism. Issue of nepotism is there. But I believe that going forward, I know that we are going to have better material, because we now have enough time. And people will go back to drawing board to at least do something about the training and the process. But giving them the sophisticated instrument is very, very important.
Okay.
So that we know
Thank you.
Thank you. Please, any other question? We still have.
Let me start with Mr. Uluwandari. Okay. I have two questions for you. Let me begin with the issue of the absence of Lagos in the Amotekun outage. So I believe that Lagos does not share the same security problem with the rest of the Southwest, right? destruction of crops in the city and stuff like that. So I want to imagine that if Lagos joined, one day we'll be shouting Laxit too, something like Brexit, Lexit, or because they do not share the same problem, even if they belong to the same region. So I think that if I were the governor of Lagos State, I don't want to put my resources in that, because even if we're in the same region, we do not share the same problems. That's number one. Number two is I like your topic. I look forward to attending it because it said local solutions to local problems. And I shared a similar excitement when I heard that there was going to be Amotekun, because it seemed like a local solution to local problems. But if you look at the organization of the Amotekun outfit, the local solution is they're beginning to enforce it into the colonial outfit. The NPF, Nigerian Police Force, was modeled after the colonial police. I think 1959, right? When they now established it. So what is a local security outfit? Even one of the pictures, with sword for those kind of English sword. And you can see how I feel that the organization, the methods, the approach should be localized, and there is no point trying to make them look like what we are not, wearing uniforms that do not concern us, So those two questions for you. Okay. 3 questions. Sorry, I forgot. Okay, so there are several security outfits in Nigeria, and though people have argued for a decentralization of our approach to security in the constitution and even among governors, but we would not also forget that there are overlapping outfits tackling security. There is there's civil defense. Peace Corps is also fighting for their own. Then there are even local vigilantes that we local people employ to keep our community safe. Even in Oyo State, where I currently school, there's still local vigilante, if there's Amotekun in my junction. So I do not understand why I'll be paying my taxes that will go to pay Amotekun. Then out of my pocket, I'll still pay my local vigilante. And then thirdly, like Bankole and I were discussing, Juju was an effective part of keeping local areas safe in those days. And I believe that even many vigilante groups still do. And you see on their guns, you see red stuff tied, even on their Amotekun. Yeah, even on their Amotekun guns. So you see like red cloth or cowries and stuff. So I don't know, is this part of the method? Because me, I'm actually interested if Amotekun was to use Juju in protecting us. I feel like it's more, it's safer. Since we do not have all of the military tactics of NATO, perhaps we can use our own effective local technology. I'll call Juju local technology because people say Songo is the founder of electricity, for example, amongst African scholars. So those 3 questions for you, sir. Who should I go to next? Let's talk about you. Sorry, biodiversity. I've been interested in African biodiversity for quite a while now. I've been looking for the picture on my phone. I can't find it. So the Food Organization have been looking at indigenous method on preserving biodiversity, not just post-harvest loss, but actual species of plants and insects and flora and fauna that are going extinct. So I have 2 questions for you from your presentation. You talked about the world global meetings and their resolutions that we should adopt. I feel like there are 2 issues with that. Where is the first one now? The world gathers in climate conferences and agricultural conferences and arrives at a solution. What is the African representation in the world conferences and resolutions. So, and most times, because I have checked a number of those policies, when you check the policies, you wonder whether they actually fit into the African context. So I don't know if you have checked some of those resolutions to see how they can be applied and whether we can actually have local originated solutions to biodiversity preservation. That's number one. Then number two, I feel that there is a lot of Western and academic arrogance in describing local knowledge of biodiversity. I feel, and that is why we in African studies now, we're looking at participatory research methods so that we do not come with the idea that, oh, these people don't know about how to preserve their food. And meanwhile, one of the reasons why, for example, there was a departure in the kind of balance of, in the kind of balance that, let me give this example so that this statement, my next statement makes sense. For example, why we plant maize and cassava, part of the, or why we plant banana and cocoa is that, banana will watch the cocoa for a while. I don't know if you know, banana will preserve the cocoa while it's young, then before the cocoa grows up, because these are, local knowledge of how to preserve the cocoa to grow, because cocoa is not indigenous to Nigeria, but then local people have their ways of what's the word now? Of understanding, exactly. So I feel that approaches like what you have described is like questioning local knowledge on exactly, it's too westernized. Yeah, so number three, sorry, I have questions for all of you. For Zoo, right? Zoo. So on regional security intervention, I'm saying this carefully now. I want to separate regional security from ethnic battles, because like he said, most countries of the world have their especially when the apparatus of the state is not crumbling, like the three examples that you mentioned. So what would be the justification method? Because I think the mechanistics of entry into can cause a lot of problem, even more than we intend to, solve. And I was thinking about the domino effect of identity successionist versus the AU's resolution. Documents that people signed to join the AU was they agreed to leave the borderlines untouched. And they agreed to do this knowing that the colonial lines that were set were not set by them. But at the same time, every African country is made up of several ethnic groups. So I want to know whether you feel like there may be a domino effect of that. If ECOWAS was to intervene, for example, an intervention led to the independence of Casamance, the domino effect across the region and across the across the African continent. Thank you. I'm sorry. My name is Rukayat from the University of Ibadan. Institute of African Studies.
Okay, local solution to local problem. I'm Bankole Tui, I'm a Sierra Leonean. And so the two presentations touch on security account in Sierra Leone. Firstly, on the local solution, Sierra Leone is a celebrated example when it comes to using local solution. When ECOMOC intervened in our civil war, there was no standing army. So the people have to come together to form an army to direct the ECOMOC across the country. So they form different groups. Once they form the community defense unit, and then ended up to a civil defense They ended up weaponizing the civil defense unit. So we are celebrating community police, and we are still using it to date. The only challenge with it for multi-ethnic societies, like most in Africa, Sierra Leone included, and Nigeria, is that you find out that these communities or representing the interests of certain tribes or ethnicity. And so it becomes a challenge when it comes to power play. So there's an overlapping of authority. Even during the Civil War, for those CDUs to be disarmed, it becomes a serious challenge because they want to keep the weapon to continue suppressing other community people and the like. And so other subgroups who were unable to form part of the CDU, they become a victim of those who were able to join parts and gain prominence. So it's become a challenge when you want to use community policing, particularly for security issues. For community issues that has to do with mobilization, intelligence gathering, those basics one, it's much more appreciable. But when it comes to security issues, there's a challenge of authority, a challenge even controlling of arms and ammunition circulates between people. So it becomes a challenge for a post-conflict country like us. But if up to date, we still have people who still have weapons. They do not hand them over. And so when we are doing the integration process, it becomes a challenge. So for security issues from a post-conflict experience of ours, I want to advise anybody to arm anybody in the name of community policing. Trust me, we are a very different. I'm from a minority tribe. We had to fight for ourselves using sorcery. We created a weapon that you cannot see to kill for ourselves. They call it witch gun, because we don't have access to weapons. So the other tribes, we are armed with weapons because they have the governance in power. The government in power was supporting them. So they gave them weapons. They started suppressing minority groups and the likes who don't have access to the weapon. So we had to fight from another way, traditional way, to protect ourselves. So it becomes very, very risky, very, very challenging. And that was one of the factors that fueled our rebel war and sustained it, when a lot of people have access to weapons that cannot be regulated and controlled. And the second one, when it comes to the conflict, it's more of a cultural identity than a political struggle. So it becomes a challenge for ECOWAS to be able to intervene, and when people want to identify themselves. And the Kasama people are not unique only to Senegal. It's a whole set of people that cut across the entire Sahel, that includes Senegal, Gambia, a lot of so they cut across even up to Nigeria. So it's an identity that they want to preserve. It's not more of a political contention that they want to outsit a government or want to form a political identity or want to form a government of their own. It's just a cultural identity, and that cultural identity has been exploited by people who want to turn it into a revolution. And they're turning it into a revolution because of the natural resource base of that region. It's a densely forested community, and so they're engaging in a lot of illegal timber logging, a lot of other mining activities that they don't want government to regulate. And so the resources they are getting from those stream of activities is what they are using to sustain this ideal. Initially, it was a mere identity contention that we want to be a Wolof people, speak our language, dress our own, live our own, because it was a kickback or a revolution to the idea of colonialism. So it was not like a separatist group that we are part, like the Ipo. The Ipo is a separatist group different from the idea of the Kasama. The Kasama is more of a cultural identity. It's not a political contention. So it's become very contentious for ECOWAS to intervene in issues that has to do with cultural identity. Thank you.
Thank you. I need presentation, but I've seen type of paper, and I'm particularly attracted to Amotekun. Sorry, Amotekun is a contemporary issue, so we have to interrogate it. Now on Amotekun, I have my concept is that when is it a finished paper? It's a work in progress. Yeah, you need to consider what are the implications of Amotekun for Nigeria's national unity or our national identity. Because now what you have with Amotekun is regions are beginning to carve out their own security apparatus. That has some some negative implications for our national identity. Because if you look at Nigeria's history, why was the local police disbanded in the first place? The fact that I also have issues with the fact that members of OPC are being integrated into Amotekun, according to what I've read. Now, if you read about OPC and you read about the ethnic conflicts they've had in southwestern Nigeria, OPC represents ethnicity. It's a group it champions the interest of Yorubas. If you go to places where there have been conflicts between Yoruba groups versus another tribe, for instance, in Kwara State, where there was a conflict between Nupes versus Yoruba in Sharia and Saragi, the Sharia people went to OPC. If you go to, these are I'm just telling you evidence-based. You go to Ofenrile as well. There's the hand of, even though that is Yoruba versus Yoruba, but OPC is an ethnic, it's an ethnic group. Now, when you have that kind of material, those kind of people come into protecting a particular region, it has implications. What happens to a Fulani man that is a law-abiding citizen who is passing through and he gets interrogated? No, these are the implications. Now, when you're writing your paper, I want you to consider Amotekun. Yes, it looks like a local solution to a local problem. I have problems with it, by the way. There are so many methodologically, I don't know how sustainable it is for you to have people wielding local guns, the Dane guns, facing AK-47 wielding bandits and kidnappers. I don't know how feasible that is. I think for me, to an extent, if you interrogate it critically, it looks like they're playing. Yes, because the people that are involved in kidnapping, they don't go around with regular guns. They are well funded. If you go into the economics of kidnapping, there's a lot of money there, and those guys are well armed. Now, according to the constitutional provisions, which limits Amotekun from a class of weapons, how do you expect Amotekun to tackle kidnapping? Let's be realistic. That's number one problem. Now, the second problem is the unity of Nigeria. Having a group protect the interests of a particular section, how does it affect the interest of Nigeria? Nigeria is made up of so many tribes. Now, when you have a group with a proven history of fighting ethnic warfare, protecting the interest of a particular region, what implications will it have for Nigeria as a unit? Your guess is as good as mine. So those are the issues with Amotekun.
Okay, let them respond briefly. 2 minutes so that we can conclude. We have other panels. Just to inform you, this panel, this is just a part 1. We have part 2. We are page 83. That's room 13A, the other room there. That will be around 3:45 p.m. So that is it. Please respond to the questions.
All right.
2 minutes.
All right. Thank you so much for the observation and the questions. All right. Let me start with the issue of Lagos involvement. Actually, the point you noted is a good point. But when you look at the operation of Amotekun, it's not only to combat the crisis of farmer and the other crisis. There are so many other issues involved. For instance, you have to ban that is of kidnapping. And you see, there are so many times when this issue of banditry because of an expressway. I think that is more reason why Lagos should show interest. It might not be happening within Lagos, but what about the outskirts of Lagos? You cannot expect the Amotekun of Oyo State to come to go beyond the border. So they have also to man their own border too, especially Lagos without man its own border. So it's not just about the elder farmer crisis. The banditry, the issue of kidnapping should also be of serious concern to Lagos state government. I think that's why That's one of the reasons why they need to get involved. They say what is local about Amotekun. Now, when you look at the operation, even though I believe that even the creation of Amotekun itself is more of psychological issues, and because the awareness itself can help to combat, because they know that these people are in existence. Anybody that wants to come, you also have them in mind. And I believe Amotekun is not just only using Daycon, like she rightly said. I know there are so many other weapons using that we do not know. Like this issue of Juju, I know, definitely they will use all those things. So it's not just about carrying the sophisticated weapon alone, not about colonial or conventional system as we have. So they are limited in terms of the weapon they carry. But I know in terms of local yes, local ammunition, local intelligence, I know they are more sophisticated, but they need to go beyond that. And that's what we are saying. I need to go beyond the local and then get some other sophistication so that they'll be able to properly combat the Amotekun. You talk about the overlapping of function. When you look at my introduction, one of the points I noted is the fact that even the conventional security actors, all of them jointly put together, they are overwhelmed. And that's why Amotekun has to come to make sure that they help to combat this issue. So I don't really believe they are overlapping, because even look at it was not the issue of this conventional issue that we have now that brought the show. Israel said the Sharia police. So they've been there to find they didn't overlap the function of the conventional police system. And then when you look at our topic is talking about providing local solutions to local process. So I believe that Amotekun as an approach is a right approach to combat. Then thank you, Ma, for raising the issue of the challenge that Amotekun could pose. And the example you cited earlier, I believe is a kind of intra-ethnic challenge.
Please conclude. We are running out of time.
I don't know a case where that.
In Lagos, any tribal when it was Shagam fighting, anywhere you find Yoruba fighting outside, fighting any other tribe, it's not in their material ways.
All right, thank you. So we take note of that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Danwei. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, so as for my first question goes to this lady. Yeah, so thank you for your question. I think the point you made about domino effect is very interesting. But I argue that ethnicity is not open for conflict, because many Jola people, they never participated in this conflict. So there is a small group of people who formed the organization. And also, I argue that because the intervention itself, what I will call for ECHO to take part, is not equal to military approach. I would say humanitarian assistance would be more appropriate in this situation, and that is why I think ECHO should take part in to help to mitigate those humanitarian efforts. And I think the central point of this research is for ECHO to mitigate community. Of state. So that is my point. But thank you for your question. And for the gentleman's question, you mentioned about that it is a cultural identity issue, right? And it is also exploited by intellectuals. And initially, this is an artificial or deliberate project that is called intellectuals in Panama, and it shaped it as a political project. Also, I would argue that the root of the Cosmos conflict also related to economic kind of problems, like the unbalanced like distribution, wealth distribution of the South. So people are people have grievance against the central government. So economic issues also explain like the root of this conflict. And as I just mentioned earlier, so still political arrangements like humanitarian assistance, like refugee resettlement, they are very essential, like for ECOWAS to take a role, like to solve the problem. Because the center point of my research is that the regional character is so strong in Cosmos conflict. So if the regional organization do nothing in this conflict, the spillover effect could affect other countries in this region, the order of the region. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think I have two questions from you. African representations in and the Western arrogance towards biodiversity. So quickly, let me start with the first one, African representations. Currently, there's an ongoing global financial summit called by the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, and the global leaders are meeting in Paris. I don't think that meeting is over. Something happened between the Kenyan president, William Ruto, and the French president. The Kenyan president accused him of the West being, or the global South being, being in control of global system, meaning that the global North, the Africans are neglected. Are neglected in all of this. Not that the Africans are not in the global table negotiating for the national interests or continental interests. The problem is always an issue of unequal partners. We are not there yet. We need to realize this, and this is why we need to come up with homegrown research. The last one, Western arrogance that she mentioned. History is all about identifying verifiable facts. To tackle all of these lots of biodiversity challenges we had back then. But then coming up, we now realize that peculiarities are changing. The effect of climate change was not as severe then as we have now, flooding and all of that. So there's need to upgrade in what we do. And that's why we need to come up with African researchers in this area of study.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for participating. This panel has been interesting and interactive as well. Well, what I will say is that security is a major need for everybody. And in post-colonial era, like some people said earlier, some of us already identified the need for us to look internally and rethink this idea of adopting the Western pattern or approach and look inward and see how we can make our lives better. You want culture, you want anything, whether cultural identity, whether political independence, you cannot achieve all these goals without security. And like she said earlier, the issue of internal security is not what one group or people can just achieve. Interestingly, the issue of Lagos being, joining Amotekun, I think I want to suggest that Lagos cannot really operate without actively being involved, because Amotekun still has some roles. And the group is also in search of recognition globally. And you know that a lot of de facto states across the world, just very few achieve their goals. Like in Nigeria, Biafra could not make it. And it's all about identity. There are some identity issues that you cannot achieve when you are not autonomous. So these are some of the interesting issues. And food, like Kelechi said, is very paramount. We cannot do without food security. And in all this, achieving these goals will require safety for everybody. So thank you for joining us. I thank my coach here in Ilori, Olatunde Olani. Once again, my name is James Okolo Semine. Thank you. We'll continue the panel. Thank you.